The Age of AI and Our Human Future. Henry A. Kissinger, Eric Schmidt, Daniel Huttenlocher. Audiobook presented by the Learner's Library. Chapter 5, Security and World Order. Chapter 6, AI and Human Identity. Chapter 7, AI and the Future. Chapter 5, Security and World Order. For as long as history has been recorded, security has been the minimum objective of an organized society. Cultures have differed in their values, and political units have differed in their interests and aspirations, but no society that could not defend itself, either alone or in alignment with other societies, has endured. In every era, societies in search of security have sought to turn technological advances into increasingly effective methods of surveilling for threats, achieving superior readiness, exercising influence beyond their borders, and, in the event of war, enabling force in order to prevail. For the earliest organized societies, advances in metallurgy, fortification architecture, horsepower, and shipbuilding were often decisive. In the early modern era, innovations in firearms and cannon, naval vessels, and navigation instruments and techniques played a comparable role. Reflecting on this eternal dynamic in his 1832 classic, On War, Prussian military theorist Karl von Clausewitz remarked, "Force, to counter opposing force, equips itself with the inventions of art and science." Some innovations, such as rampart and moat construction, have favored defense. Yet with each century, a premium has been placed on acquiring means of projecting power across progressively longer distances with progressively greater speed and force. By the time of the American Civil War, 1861–65, and the Franco-Prussian War, 1870–71, military conflicts had entered the age of the machine, increasingly assuming the characteristics of total war, such as industrialized arms production, orders relayed by telegraph, and troops and material transported by rail across continental distances. With each augmentation of power, major powers have taken one another's measure, assessing which side would prevail in a conflict, what risks and losses such a victory would entail, what would justify them, and how the entry of another power and its arsenal would affect the outcome. The capacities, objectives, and strategies of varied nations were set, at least theoretically, in an equilibrium, or a balance of power. In the past century, strategy's calibration of means to ends has come out of joint. The technologies used to pursue security have multiplied and grown more destructive, even as the strategies for using them to achieve defined aims have grown more elusive. In our era, the advent of cyber and AI capabilities are adding extraordinary new levels of complexity and abstraction to these calculations. In this process, World War I, 1914–18, was a signal disjunction. In the early 1900s, the major powers of Europe, with advanced economies, pioneering scientific and intellectual communities, and boundless confidence in their global missions, harnessed the technological advances of the Industrial Revolution to construct modern militaries. They accumulated masses of troops by conscription and material transportable by train as well as machine guns, and other rapid-loading firearms. They developed advanced production methods to replenish arsenals at machine speed, chemical weapons, whose use has since been outlawed, a ban that most, but not all, governments have accepted, and armored naval vessels and rudimentary tanks. They devised elaborate strategies based on achieving advantage through swift mobilization and alliances, based on ironclad pledges among allies to mobilize in concert, swiftly and fully, upon provocation. When a crisis of no inherent global significance arose, The assassination of the heir to the Habsburg throne by a Serbian nationalist, the great powers of Europe followed these plans into a general conflict. The result was a catastrophe that destroyed a generation in pursuit of results that bore no relation to any of the parties' original war aims. Three empires witnessed the collapse of their institutions. Even the victors were depleted for decades and suffered a permanent diminution of their international roles. A combination of diplomatic inflexibility, advanced military technology, and hair-trigger mobilization plans had produced a vicious circle, making global war possible but also unavoidable. Casualties were so enormous that the need to justify them made compromise impossible. Since that cataclysm, for all the attention, discipline, and resources they have devoted to their arsenals, the major powers have magnified the riddles of modern strategy. At the close of the Second World War and during the opening decades of the Cold War, the two superpowers vied to build nuclear weapons and intercontinental delivery systems, capabilities whose vast destructiveness proved plausibly relatable to only the most grave and total strategic objectives. Observing the first nuclear weapons test in the deserts of New Mexico, the physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer, one of the fathers of the atomic bomb, was moved to invoke not the strategic maxims of Clausewitz but a line from Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." This insight presaged the central paradox of Cold War strategy, that the dominant weapons technology of the era was never used. The destructiveness of weapons remained out of proportion to achievable objectives other than pure survival. The link between capabilities and objectives remained broken throughout the Cold War, or at least not connected in a manner conducive to the clear development of strategy. The major powers constructed technologically advanced militaries and both regional and global alliance systems, but they did not use them against each other or in conflicts with smaller countries or armed movements with more rudimentary arsenals. A bitter truth experienced by France in Algeria, the United States in Korea, and the United States and the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. The age of cyber warfare and AI. Today, after the Cold War, the major powers and other states have augmented their arsenal with cyber capabilities whose utility derives largely from their opacity and deniability and, in some cases, their operation at the ambiguous border of disinformation, intelligence collection, sabotage, and traditional conflict, creating strategies without acknowledged doctrines. Meanwhile, each advance has been paired with new vulnerabilities. The AI era risks complicating the riddles of modern strategy further beyond human intention, or perhaps complete human comprehension. Even if nations refrain from the widespread deployment of so-called lethal autonomous weapons, automatic or semi-automatic AI weapons that are trained and authorized to select their own targets, and attack without further human authorization, AI holds the prospect of augmenting conventional, nuclear, and cyber capabilities in ways that make security relationships among rivals more challenging to predict and maintain, and conflicts more difficult to limit. AI's potential defensive functions operate on several levels and may soon prove indispensable. Already, AI-piloted fighter jets have shown a substantial ability to dominate human pilots in simulated dogfights. Using some of the same general principles that enabled AlphaZero's victories and the discovery of Halcyon, AI may identify patterns of conduct that even an adversary did not plan or notice, then recommend methods to counteract them. AI may permit simultaneous translation or the instantaneous relay of other critical information to personnel in crisis zones, whose ability to understand their surroundings or make themselves understood may be essential to a mission or personal safety. No major country can afford to ignore AI's security dimensions. A race for strategic AI advantage is already taking place, particularly between the United States and China, and to some extent Russia. As the knowledge, or suspicion, that others are obtaining certain AI capabilities spreads, more nations will seek them. Once introduced, these capabilities could spread quickly. Although creating a sophisticated AI requires substantial computing power, proliferating or operating the AI generally does not. The solution to these complexities is neither to despair nor disarm. Nuclear, cyber, and AI technologies exist. Each will inevitably play a role in strategy. None will be uninvented. If the United States and its allies recoil before the implications of these capabilities and halt progress on them, the result would not be a more peaceful world. Instead, it would be a less balanced world in which the development and use of the most formidable strategic capabilities takes place with less regard for the concepts of democratic accountability and international equilibrium. Both national interest and moral imperative counsel that the United States not cede these fields. Indeed, the United States should endeavor to shape them. Progress and competition in these fields will involve transformations that will test traditional concepts of security. Before these transformations reach a point of inexorability, some effort must be made to define AI-related strategic doctrines and compare them to those of other AI powers, states and non-state actors alike. In the decades to come, we will need to achieve a balance of power that accounts for the intangibles of cyber conflicts and mass-scale disinformation, as well as the distinctive qualities of AI-facilitated war. Realism compels a recognition that AI rivals, even as they compete, should endeavor to explore setting limits on the development and use of exceptionally destructive, destabilizing, and unpredictable AI capabilities. A sober effort at AI arms control is not at odds with national security. It is an attempt to ensure that security is pursued and achieved in the context of a human future. Nuclear weapons and deterrence. In prior eras, when a new weapon emerged, militaries integrated it into their arsenals and strategists devised doctrines that enabled its use in pursuit of political ends. The advent of nuclear weapons broke this link. The first, and to date only, use of nuclear weapons in war, by the United States against Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, compelling a swift end to the Second World War in the Pacific, was recognized immediately as a watershed. Even as the world's major powers redoubled their efforts to master the new weapons technology and incorporate it into their arsenals, they engaged in unusually open and searching debate about the strategic and moral implications of its use. With power on a scale far beyond that of any other form of armament at the time, nuclear weapons posed fundamental questions. Could this tremendous destructive force be related, by way of some guiding principle or doctrine, to the traditional elements of strategy? Could the use of nuclear weapons be reconciled with political objectives short of total war and mutual destruction? Would the bomb admit of calibrated, proportional, or tactical use? The answer, to date, has ranged from ambiguous to negative. Even during the brief period when the United States held a nuclear monopoly, 1945 to 1949, and in the somewhat longer period during which it possessed substantially more effective nuclear delivery systems, it never developed a strategic doctrine or identified a moral principle that persuaded it to use nuclear weapons in an actual conflict following the Second World War. After that, absent clear doctrinal lines that had been mutually agreed upon by the existing nuclear powers, and perhaps not even then, no policymaker could know what would follow a limited use and whether it would remain limited. To date, such an attempt has not been made. During a 1955 crisis over shelling across the Taiwan Strait, President Eisenhower, threatening the then non-nuclear People's Republic of China if it did not de-escalate, remarked that he saw no reason why tactical nuclear weapons could not be used, just exactly as you would use a bullet or anything else. Nearly 7 decades later, no leader has yet tested this proposition. Instead, during the Cold War, the overriding objective of nuclear strategy became deterrence, the use of weapons, primarily through a declared willingness to deploy them, to prevent an adversary from taking action, either by initiating a conflict or using its own nuclear weapons in one. At its core, nuclear deterrence was a psychological strategy of negative objectives. It aimed to persuade an opponent not to act by means of a threatened counteraction. This dynamic depended both on a state's physical capacities and on an intangible quality, the potential aggressor's state of mind and its opponent's ability to shape it. Viewed through the lens of deterrence, seeming weakness could have the same consequences as an actual deficiency. A bluff taken seriously could prove a more useful deterrent than a bona fide threat that was ignored. Unique among security strategies, at least until now, nuclear deterrence rests on a series of untestable abstractions. The deterring power could not prove how or by what margin something had been prevented. Despite these paradoxes, nuclear arsenals were incorporated into basic concepts of international order. When the United States possessed a nuclear monopoly, its arsenal was used to deter conventional attacks and extend a nuclear umbrella over free or allied countries. A Soviet advance across Western Europe was held in check by the prospect, however remote or abstract, that the United States would use nuclear weapons to arrest the attack. Once the Soviet Union crossed the nuclear threshold, the principal purpose of both superpowers' nuclear weapons increasingly became deterring the use of those weapons by the other side. The existence of survivable nuclear capabilities, that is, nuclear weapons that could be launched in a counterattack following an adversary's hypothetical first strike, was relied upon to deter nuclear war itself. And it achieved that objective with respect to conflict among the superpowers. The Cold War hegemons expended tremendous resources on expanding their nuclear capabilities at the same time, as their arsenals grew increasingly remote from the day-to-day conduct of strategy. The possession of these arsenals did not deter non-nuclear states, China, Vietnam, Afghanistan, from challenging the superpowers, nor did it stop Central and Eastern Europeans from demanding autonomy from Moscow. During the Korean War, the Soviet Union was the only nuclear power beyond the United States, and the latter possessed a decisive advantage in the number of weapons and means of delivery. Yet American policymakers refrained from using them, opting to suffer tens of thousands of casualties in World War I-style battles against Soviet-aligned, in retrospect, tenuously, non-nuclear Chinese and North Korean forces rather than embrace the uncertainty or moral opprobrium of nuclear escalation. Since then, every nuclear power confronting a non-nuclear opponent has reached the same conclusion, even when facing defeat at the hands of its non-nuclear foe. During this era, policymakers did not want for strategies. Under the 1950s doctrine of massive retaliation, the United States threatened to respond to any assault, nuclear or conventional, with massive nuclear escalation. Yet a doctrine designed to turn any conflict, however minor, into Armageddon proved psychologically and diplomatically untenable, as well as partially ineffective. In response, some strategists proposed doctrines that would permit the use of tactical nuclear weapons in limited nuclear war. Yet these propositions foundered on concerns regarding escalation and limits. Policymakers feared that the doctrinal lines strategists proposed were too illusory to halt escalation into a global nuclear war. As a result, nuclear strategy remained focused on deterrence and ensuring the credibility of threats, even under apocalyptic conditions beyond those that any human had ever experienced during war. The United States distributed its weapons geographically and constructed a triad, land, sea, and air, of launch capabilities, ensuring that even a surprise first strike by an adversary would not prevent the United States from mounting a devastating response. The Soviets reportedly explored the use of a system designed to be capable, once switched on by human users, of detecting an incoming nuclear strike and disseminating launch orders for a counterattack without further human intervention. An early exploration of the concept of semi-automated warfare involving delegation of certain command functions to a machine. Strategists in government and academia found the reliance on nuclear strikes without a defensive counterpart disquieting. They explored defensive systems that, at least in theory, would extend policymakers' decisional window during a nuclear standoff, permitting an opportunity to conduct diplomacy, or, at a minimum, to gather more information and correct misinterpretations. Ironically, however, the pursuit of defensive systems only further accelerated the demand for offensive weapons to penetrate defenses on both sides. As both superpowers' arsenals grew, the possibility of actually deploying nuclear weapons in the service of preventing or punishing the other side's actions came to seem increasingly surreal and incredible, potentially threatening the logic of deterrence itself. The recognition of this nuclear deadlock produced a new doctrine with a name equal parts threat and sardonic recognition: mutual assured destruction, or MAD. Because the number of casualties assumed by this theory, which reduced targets while compounding destructiveness, were vast, increasingly, nuclear weapons were confined to the domain of signaling and as increasing the readiness of key systems and units, moving incrementally toward preparations for a nuclear launch, in ways that were meant to be noticed and heeded. But even sending such signals was done sparingly, lest adversaries misinterpret them and unleash global catastrophe. In quest of security, humanity had produced an ultimate weapon and elaborate strategic doctrines to accompany it. The result was a permeating anxiety that such weaponry might ever be used. Arms control was a concept intended to assuage this dilemma. Arms control. Whereas deterrence sought to prevent nuclear war by threatening it, arms control aimed to prevent nuclear war through the limitation or even abolition of the weapons, or categories of weapons, themselves. This approach was paired with non-proliferation, the concept, underpinned by an elaborate set of treaties, technical safeguards, and regulatory and other control mechanisms, that nuclear weapons and the knowledge and technology supporting their construction should be prevented from spreading beyond the nations that already possessed them. Neither arms control nor non-proliferation measures had been attempted on such scale for any previous weapons technology. To date, neither strategy has fully succeeded. Nor has either been pursued in earnest for the major new classes of weapons, cyber and AI, that have been invented in the post-Cold War era. Yet as entrants to the nuclear, cyber, and AI arenas multiply, the arms control era still holds lessons worthy of consideration. Following the nuclear brinkmanship and apparently near conflict of the Cuban Missile Crisis, in October of 1962, the then two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, sought to circumscribe nuclear competition through diplomacy. Even as their arsenals grew, and the Chinese, British, and French arsenals entered a calculus of deterrence, Washington and Moscow authorized their negotiators to engage in more substantive arms control dialogue. Warily, They tested for limits in nuclear weapons counts and capabilities that would be compatible with the maintenance of strategic equilibrium. Eventually, the two sides agreed to limit not only their offensive arsenals but also, following the paradoxical logic of deterrence, in which vulnerability was held to secure peace, their defensive capabilities. The result was the Strategic Arms Limitation Agreement and the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty of the 1970s, and eventually the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, START, of 1991. In all cases, ceilings placed on offensive weapons preserved the superpowers' capacities to destroy, and thereby presumably to deter, each other while at the same time moderating the arms races inspired by strategies of deterrence. Although they remained adversaries and continued to spar for strategic advantage, Washington and Moscow both gained a measure of certainty in their calculations via arms control negotiations. By educating each other about their strategic capabilities, and by agreeing to certain basic limits and verification mechanisms, they both sought to address the fear that the other would suddenly seize an advantage in a nuclear class of weapons in order to strike first. These initiatives ultimately went beyond aiming for self-restraint to actively discouraging further proliferation. The United States and Russia, in the mid-1960s, originated a multi-commitment, multi-mechanism regime intended to prohibit all but the original nuclear states from acquiring or possessing nuclear weapons, in exchange for commitments to help other states harness nuclear technology for renewable energy. Such outcomes were facilitated by a distinctive shared sentiment about nuclear weapons, in politics, culture, and in the relationships between individual Cold War leaders, that recognized that a nuclear war between major powers would involve irreversible decisions and unique risks for victor, vanquished, and bystanders alike. Nuclear weapons presented policymakers with two persistent related riddles: how to define superiority and how to limit inferiority. In an era in which the two superpowers possessed sufficient weaponry to destroy the world many times over, what did superiority mean? Once an arsenal had been built and deployed in a credibly survivable manner, the link between the acquisition of additional weapons, the advantages obtained, and the objectives served became opaque. At the same time, a handful of nations acquired their own modest nuclear arsenals, calculating that they only needed an arsenal sufficient to inflict devastation, not achieve victory, in order to deter attacks. Nuclear non-use is not an inherently permanent achievement. It is a condition that must be secured by each successive generation of leaders adjusting the deployments and capabilities of their most destructive weapons to a technology evolving at unprecedented speed. This will become particularly challenging as new entrants with varying strategic doctrines and varying attitudes toward the deliberate infliction of civilian casualties seek to develop nuclear capabilities, and as equations of deterrence become increasingly diffuse and uncertain. Into this world of unresolved strategic paradoxes, new capabilities and attendant complexities are emerging. The first is cyber conflict, which has magnified vulnerabilities as well as expanded the field of strategic contests and the variety of options available to participants. The second is AI, which has the capacity to transform conventional, nuclear, and cyber weapons strategy. The emergence of new technology has compounded the dilemmas of nuclear weapons. Conflict in the digital age. Throughout history, a nation's political influence has tended to be roughly correlative to its military power and strategic capabilities, its ability, even if exerted primarily through implicit threats, to inflict damage on other societies. Yet an equilibrium based on a calculus of power is not static or self-maintaining. Instead, It relies first on a consensus regarding the constituent elements of power and the legitimate bounds of their use. Likewise, maintaining equilibrium requires congruent assessments among all members of the system, especially rivals, regarding states' relative capabilities and intentions, as well as of the consequences of aggression. Finally, the preservation of equilibrium requires an actual, and recognized, balance. When a participant in the system enhances its power disproportionately over others, the system will attempt to adjust, either through the organization of countervailing force or the accommodation of a new reality. When the calculation of equilibrium becomes uncertain, or when nations arrive at fundamentally different calculations of relative power, the risk of conflict through miscalculation reaches its height. In our era, these calculations have entered a new realm of abstraction. This transformation includes so-called cyber weapons, a class of weapons involving dual-use civilian capabilities so that their status as weapons is ambiguous. In some cases, their utility in exercising and augmenting power derives largely from their users not disclosing their existence, or acknowledging their full range of capabilities. Traditionally, parties to a conflict had no difficulty recognizing that a clash had occurred, or recognizing who the belligerents were. Opponents calculated rivals' capabilities and assessed the speed with which their arsenals could be deployed. None of these traditional verities translates directly to the cyber realm. Conventional and nuclear weapons exist in physical space, where their deployments can be perceived and their capabilities at least roughly calculated. By contrast, cyber weapons derive an important part of their utility from their opacity. Their disclosure may effectively degrade some of their capabilities. Their intrusions exploit previously undisclosed flaws in software, obtaining access to a network or system without the authorized user's permission or knowledge. In the contingency of distributed denial of service, DDoS, attacks, as on communication systems, a swarm of seemingly valid information requests may be used to overwhelm systems and make them unavailable for their intended use. In such cases, the true sources of the attack may be masked, making it difficult or impossible to determine, at least in the moment, who is attacking. Even one of the most famous instances of cyber-enabled industrial sabotage, the Stuxnet disruption of manufacturing control computers used in Iranian nuclear efforts, has not been formally acknowledged by any government. Conventional and nuclear weapons are targetable with relative precision, and moral and legal imperatives direct that they target military forces and installations. Cyber weapons can affect computing and communications systems broadly, often hitting civilian systems with particular force. Cyber weapons can also be co-opted, modified, and redeployed by other actors for other purposes. In certain respects, this makes cyber weapons akin to biological and chemical weapons, whose effects can spread in unintended and unknown ways. In many cases, they affect large swaths of societies, not just specific targets on a battlefield. The attributes that lend cyber weapons their utility render the concept of cyber arms control difficult to conceptualize or pursue. Nuclear arms control negotiators were able to disclose or describe a class of warheads without negating that weapon's function. Cyber arms control negotiators, which do not yet exist, will need to solve the paradox that discussion of a cyber weapon's capability may be one and the same with its forfeiture, permitting the adversary to patch a vulnerability, or its proliferation, permitting the adversary to copy the code or method of intrusion. These challenges are made more complex by the ambiguity surrounding key cyber terms and concepts. Various forms of cyber intrusions, online propaganda, and information warfare are called by various observers in various contexts: cyber war, cyber attacks, and in some commentary, an act of war. But this vocabulary is unsettled and sometimes used inconsistently. Some activities, such as intrusions into networks to collect information, may be analogous to traditional intelligence gathering, though at new scales. Other attacks, such as the election interference campaigns on social media undertaken by Russia and other powers, are a kind of digitized propaganda, disinformation, and political meddling with a larger scope and impact than in previous eras. They are made possible by the expansiveness of the digital technology and network platforms on which these campaigns unfold. Still, other cyber actions have the capacity to inflict physical impacts akin to those suffered during traditional hostilities. Uncertainty over the nature, scope, or attribution of a cyber action may render seemingly basic factors a matter of debate, such as whether a conflict has begun, with whom or what the conflict engages, and how far up the escalation ladder the conflict between the parties may be. In that sense, major countries are engaged in a kind of cyber conflict now, though one without a readily definable nature or scope. A central paradox of our digital age is that the greater a society's digital capacity, the more vulnerable it becomes. Computers, communications systems, financial markets, electricity grids, and the digital command and control systems they depend on, even the mechanics of democratic politics, involve systems that are, to varying degrees, vulnerable to cyber manipulation or attack. As advanced economies integrate digital command and control systems into power plants and electricity grids, shift their governmental programs onto large servers and cloud systems, and transfer data into electronic ledgers, their vulnerability to cyber attack multiplies. They present a richer set of targets so that a successful attack could be substantially devastating. Conversely, in the event of a digital disruption, the low-tech state, the terrorist organization, and even individual attackers may assess that they have relatively much less to lose. The comparatively low cost of cyber capabilities and operations, and the relative deniability that some cyber operations may provide, has encouraged some states to use semi-autonomous actors to perform cyber functions. Not unlike the paramilitary groups that pervaded the Balkans on the eve of World War I. These groups may be difficult to control and may engage in provocative activities without official sanction. Compounded by leakers and saboteurs who can neutralize significant portions of a state's cyber capacity, or roil its domestic political landscape, even if these activities do not escalate to the level of traditional armed conflict. The speed and unpredictability of the cyber domain and the variety of actors it contains may tempt policymakers into preemptive action in order to forestall a knockout blow. The speed and ambiguity of the cyber realm have favored offense and encouraged concepts of active defense and defending forward, which seek to disrupt and preclude attacks. The degree to which cyber deterrence is possible depends in part on what a defender aims to deter and how success is measured. The most effective attacks have usually been those that occur, often without immediate recognition or formal acknowledgement, below the threshold of traditional definitions of armed conflict. No major cyber actor, governmental or non-governmental, has disclosed the full range of its capabilities or activities, not even to deter actions by others. Strategy and doctrine are evolving uncertainly in a shadow realm, even as new capabilities are emerging. We are at the beginning of a strategic frontier that requires systemic exploration, close collaboration between government and industry to ensure competitive security capabilities, and, in time, and with appropriate safeguards, discussion among major powers concerning limits. AI and the upheaval in security. The destructiveness of nuclear weapons and the mysteries of cyber weapons are increasingly joined by new classes of capabilities that draw on principles of artificial intelligence discussed in previous chapters. Quietly, sometimes tentatively, but with unmistakable momentum, nations are developing and deploying AI that facilitates strategic action across a wide range of military capabilities, with potentially revolutionary effects on security policy. The introduction of non-human logic to military systems and processes will transform strategy. Militaries and security services training or partnering with AI will achieve insights and influence that surprise and occasionally unsettle. These partnerships may negate or decisively reinforce aspects of traditional strategies and tactics. If AI is delegated a measure of control over cyber weapons, offensive or defensive, or physical weapons such as aircraft, it may rapidly conduct functions that humans carry out only with difficulty. AIs such as the U.S. Air Force's Zero have already flown planes and operated radar systems during test flights. In Zero's case, the AI's developers designed it to make final calls without human override but limited its capabilities to flying a plane and operating a radar system. Other countries and design teams may exercise less restraint. In addition to its potentially transformative utility, AI's capacity for autonomy and separate logic generates a layer of incalculability. Most traditional military strategies and tactics have been based on the assumption of a human adversary whose conduct and decision-making calculus fit within a recognizable framework or have been defined by experience and conventional wisdom. Yet an AI piloting an aircraft or scanning for targets follows its own logic, which may be inscrutable to an adversary and unsusceptible to traditional signals and feints, and which will, in most cases, proceed faster than the speed of human thought. War has always been a realm of uncertainty and contingency, but the entry of AI to this space will introduce new dimensions. Because AIs are dynamic and emergent, even those powers creating or wielding an AI-designed or AI-operated weapon may not know exactly how powerful it is, or exactly what it will do in a given situation. How does one develop a strategy, offensive or defensive, for something that perceives aspects of the environment that humans may not, or may not as quickly, and that can learn and change through processes that, in some cases, exceed the pace or range of human thought? If the effects of an AI-assisted weapon depend on the AI's perception during combat, and the conclusions it draws from the phenomena it perceives, can the strategic effects of some weapons be proved only through use? If a competitor trains its AI in silence and secrecy, can leaders know, outside of a conflict, whether they are ahead or behind in an arms race? In a traditional conflict, the psychology of the adversary is a critical focal point at which strategic action aims. An algorithm knows only its instructions and objectives, not morale or doubt. Because of AI's potential to adapt in response to the phenomena it encounters, when two AI weapons systems are deployed against each other, neither side is likely to have a precise understanding of the results their interaction will generate or their collateral effects. They may discern only imprecisely the other's capabilities and penalties for entering into a conflict. For engineers and builders, these limitations may put premiums on speed, breadth of effects, and endurance, attributes that may make conflicts more intense and widely felt, and above all, more unpredictable. At the same time, even with AI, a strong defense is the prerequisite of security. Unilateral abandonment of the new technology is precluded by its ubiquity. Yet even as they arm themselves, governments should assess and attempt to explore how the addition of AI logic to the human experience of battle can render war more humane and precise and reflect on the impact on diplomacy and world order. AI and machine learning will change actors' strategic and tactical options by expanding the capabilities of existing classes of weapons. Not only can AI enable conventional weapons to be targeted more precisely, it can also enable them to be targeted in new and unconventional ways, such as, at least in theory, at a particular individual or object rather than a location. By poring through vast amounts of information, AI cyberweapons can learn how to penetrate defenses without requiring humans to discover software flaws that can be exploited. By the same token, AI can also be used defensively, locating and repairing flaws before they are exploited. But since the attacker can choose the target, AI gives the party on offense an inherent if not insuperable advantage. If a country faces combat with an adversary that has trained its AI to fly planes, make independent targeting decisions, and fire, what changes in tactics, strategy, or willingness to resort to larger, or even nuclear, weapons will the incorporation of this technology produce? AI opens new horizons of capabilities in the information space, including in the realm of disinformation. Generative AI can create vast amounts of false but plausible information. AI-facilitated disinformation and psychological warfare, including the use of artificially created personae, pictures, videos, and speech, is poised to produce unsettling new vulnerabilities, particularly for free societies. Widely shared demonstrations have produced seemingly realistic pictures and video of public figures saying things they have never said. In theory, AI could be used to determine the most effective ways of delivering this synthetic AI-generated content to people, tailoring it to their biases and expectations. If a national leader's synthetic image is manipulated by an adversary to foment discord or issue misleading directives, will the public, or even other governments and officials, discern the deception in time? In contrast to the field of nuclear weapons, no widely shared proscription, and no clear concept of deterrence, or of degrees of escalation, attend such uses of AI. AI-assisted weapons, both physical and cyber, are being prepared by U.S. rivals, and some are reportedly already being used. AI powers are in a position to deploy machines and systems exercising rapid logic and emergent and evolving behavior to attack, defend, surveil, spread disinformation, and identify and disable one another's AI. As transformative AI capabilities evolve and spread, major nations will, in the absence of verifiable restraints, continue to strive to achieve a superior position. They will assume that proliferation of AI is bound to occur once useful new AI capabilities are introduced. As a result, aided by such technologies' dual civilian and military use and its ease of copying and transmission, AI's fundamentals and key innovations will be, in significant measure, public. Where AIs are controlled, controls may prove imperfect, either because advances in technology render them obsolete or because they prove permeable to a determined actor. New users may adapt underlying algorithms for very different aims. A commercial innovation by one society could be adapted for security or information warfare purposes by another. The most strategically significant aspects of cutting-edge AI development will frequently be adopted by governments to meet their concepts of national interest. Efforts to conceptualize a cyber balance of power and AI deterrence are in their infancy, if that. Until these concepts are defined, planning will carry an abstract quality. In a conflict, a warring party may seek to overwhelm the will of its enemy through the use, or threatened use, of a weapon whose effects are not well understood. The most revolutionary and unpredictable effect may occur at the point where AI and human intelligence encounter each other. Historically, countries planning for battle have been able to understand, if imperfectly, their adversaries' doctrines, tactics, and strategic psychology. This has permitted the development of adversarial strategies and tactics as well as a symbolic language of demonstrative military actions, such as intercepting a jet nearing a border or sailing a vessel through a contested waterway. Yet where a military uses AI to plan or target, or even assist dynamically during a patrol or conflict, these familiar concepts and interactions may become newly strange because they will involve communication with, and interpretation of, an intelligence that is unfamiliar in its methods and tactics. Fundamentally, the shift to AI and AI-assisted weapons and defense systems involves a measure of reliance on, and, in extreme cases, delegation to, an intelligence of considerable analytic potential operating on a fundamentally different experiential paradigm. Such reliance will introduce unknown or poorly understood risks. For this reason, human operators must be involved in and positioned to monitor and control AI actions that have potentially lethal effects. If this human role does not avoid all error, it at least ensures moral agency and accountability. The deepest challenge, however, may be philosophical. If aspects of strategy come to operate in conceptual and analytical realms that are accessible to AI but not to human reason, they will become opaque in their processes, reach, and ultimate significance. If policymakers conclude that AI's assistance in scouring the deepest patterns of reality is necessary to understand the capabilities and intentions of adversaries, who may field their own AI, and respond to them in a timely manner, delegation of critical decisions to machines may grow inevitable. Societies are likely to reach differing instinctive limits on what to delegate and what risks and consequences to accept. Major countries should not wait for a crisis to initiate a dialogue about the implications, strategic, doctrinal, and moral, of these evolutions. If they do, their impact is likely to be irreversible. An international attempt to limit these risks is imperative. Managing AI. These issues must be considered and understood before intelligent systems are sent to confront one another. They acquire additional urgency because the strategic use of cyber and AI capabilities implies a broader field for strategic contests. They will extend beyond historic battlefields to, in a sense, anywhere that is connected to a digital network. Digital programs now control a vast and growing realm of physical systems, and an increasing number of these systems, in some cases down to door locks and refrigerators, are networked. This has produced a system of stunning complexity, reach, and vulnerability. For AI powers, pursuing some form of understanding and mutual restraint is critical. In cases where systems and capabilities are altered easily and relatively undetectably by a change in computer code, each major government may assume that its adversaries are willing to take strategically sensitive AI research, development, and deployment one step further than what they have publicly acknowledged or even privately pledged. From a purely technical perspective, the lines between engaging AI in reconnaissance, targeting, and lethal autonomous action are relatively easily crossed, making a search for mutual restraint and verification systems as difficult as it is imperative. The quest for reassurance and restraint will have to contend with the dynamic nature of AI. Once they are released into the world, AI-facilitated cyber weapons may be able to adapt and learn well beyond their intended targets. The very capabilities of the weapon might change as AI reacts to its environment. If weapons are able to change in ways different in scope or kind from what their creators anticipated or threatened, calculations of deterrence and escalation may turn illusory. Because the range of activities an AI is capable of undertaking both at the initial design phase and during the deployment phase, may need to be adjusted so that a human retains the ability to monitor and turn off or redirect a system that has begun to stray. To avoid unexpected and potentially catastrophic outcomes, such restraints must be reciprocal. Limitations on AI and cyber capabilities will be challenging to define, and proliferation will be difficult to arrest. Capabilities developed and used by major powers have the potential to fall into the hands of terrorists and rogue actors. Likewise, smaller nations that do not possess nuclear weapons and have limited conventional weapons capability have the capacity to wield outsized influence by investing in leading-edge AI and cyber arsenals. Inevitably, countries will delegate discrete, non-lethal tasks to AI algorithms, some operated by private entities, including the performance of defensive functions that detect and prevent intrusions in cyberspace. The attack surface of a digital, highly networked society will be too vast for human operators to defend manually. As many aspects of human life shift online, and as economies continue to digitize, a rogue cyber AI could disrupt whole sectors. Countries, companies, and even individuals should invest in fail-safes to insulate them from such scenarios. The most extreme form of such protection will involve severing network connections and taking systems offline. For nations, disconnection could become the ultimate form of defense. Short of such extreme measures, only AI will be capable of performing certain vital cyber defense functions, in part because of the vast extent of cyberspace and the nearly infinite array of possible actions within it. The most significant defensive capabilities in this domain will therefore likely be beyond the reach of all but a few nations. Beyond AI-enabled defense systems lies the most vexing category of capabilities: lethal autonomous weapons systems, generally understood to include systems that, once activated, can select and engage targets without further human intervention. The key issue in this domain is human oversight and the capability of timely human intervention. An autonomous system may have a human on the loop, monitoring its activities passively, or in the loop, with human authorization required for certain actions. Unless restricted by mutual agreement that is observed and verifiable, the latter form of weapons system may eventually encompass entire strategies and objectives, such as defending a border or achieving a particular outcome against an adversary, and operate without substantial human involvement. In these arenas, it is imperative to ensure an appropriate role for human judgment in overseeing and directing the use of force. Such limitations will have only limited meaning if they are adopted only unilaterally, by one nation or a small group of nations. Governments of technologically advanced countries should explore the challenges of mutual restraint supported by enforceable verification. AI increases the inherent risk of preemption and premature use, escalating into conflict. A country fearing that its adversary is developing automatic capabilities may seek to preempt it. If the attack succeeds, there may be no way to know whether it was justified. To prevent unintended escalation, major powers should pursue their competition within a framework of verifiable limits. Negotiation should not only focus on moderating an arms race but also making sure that both sides know, in general terms, what the other is doing. But both sides must expect, and plan accordingly, that the other will withhold its most security-sensitive secrets. There will never be complete trust. But as nuclear arms negotiations during the Cold War demonstrated, that does not mean that no measure of understanding can be achieved. We raise these issues in an effort to define the challenges that AI introduces to strategy. For all their benefits, the treaties, and the accompanying mechanisms of communication, enforcement, and verification that came to define the nuclear age were not historical inevitabilities. They were the products of human agency and a mutual recognition of peril and responsibility. Impact on civilian and military technologies. Three qualities have traditionally facilitated the separation of military and civilian domains: technological differentiation, concentrated control, and magnitude of effect. Technologies with either exclusively military or exclusively civilian applications are described as differentiated. Concentrated control refers to technologies that a government can easily manage as opposed to technologies that spread easily, and thereby escape government control. Finally, the magnitude of effect refers to a technology's destructive potential. Throughout history, many technologies have been dual-use. Others have spread easily and widely, and some have had tremendous destructive potential. Until now, though, none has been all three: dual-use, easily spread, and potentially substantially destructive. The railroads that delivered goods to market were the same that delivered soldiers to battle, but they had no destructive potential. Nuclear technologies are often dual-use and may generate tremendous destructive capacity, but their complicated infrastructure enables relatively secure governmental control. A hunting rifle may be in widespread use and possess both military and civilian applications, but its limited capacity prevents its wielder from inflicting destruction on a strategic level. AI breaks this paradigm. It is emphatically dual-use. It spreads easily, being, in essence, no more than lines of code. Most algorithms, with some noteworthy exceptions, can be run on single computers or small networks, meaning that governments have difficulty controlling the technology by controlling the infrastructure. Finally, AI applications have substantial destructive potential. This relatively unique constellation of qualities, when coupled with the broad range of stakeholders, produces strategic challenges of novel complexity. AI-enabled weapons may allow adversaries to launch digital assaults with exceptional speed, dramatically accelerating the human capacity to exploit digital vulnerabilities. As such, a state may effectively have no time to evaluate the signs of an incoming attack. Instead, it may need to respond immediately or risk disablement. If a state has the means, it may elect to respond nearly simultaneously, before the attack can occur fully, constructing an AI-enabled system to scan for attacks and empowering it to counterattack. For the opposing side, the reported existence of such a system and the knowledge that it could act without warning may serve as a spur to additional construction and planning, which may include developing parallel technology or one based on different algorithms. Unless care is taken to develop a common concept of limits, the compulsion to act first may overwhelm the need to act wisely, as was the case in the early 20th century, if indeed humans participate in such decisions at all. In the stock market, sophisticated so-called quant firms have recognized that AI algorithms can spot market patterns and react with speed that exceeds that of even the ablest trader. Accordingly, such firms have delegated control over certain aspects of their securities trading to these algorithms. In many cases, these algorithmic systems can exceed human profits by a substantial margin. However, they occasionally grossly miscalculate, potentially far beyond the worst human error. In the financial world, such errors devastate portfolios but do not take lives. In the strategic domain, however, an algorithmic failure analogous to a flash crash could be catastrophic. If strategic defense in the digital realm requires tactical offense, if one side errs in its calculations or its actions, an escalatory pattern might be triggered inadvertently. Attempts to incorporate these new capabilities into a defined concept of strategy and international equilibrium is complicated by the fact that the expertise required for technological preeminence is no longer concentrated exclusively in government. A wide range of actors and institutions participate in shaping technology with strategic implications, from traditional government contractors to individual inventors, entrepreneurs, startups, and private research laboratories. Not all will regard their missions as inherently compatible with national objectives as defined by the federal government. A process of mutual education between industry, academia, and government can help bridge this gap and ensure that key principles of AI's strategic implications are understood in a common conceptual framework. Few eras have faced a strategic and technological challenge so complex and with so little consensus about either the nature of the challenge or even the vocabulary necessary for discussing it. The unresolved challenge of the nuclear age was that humanity developed a technology for which strategists could find no viable operational doctrine. The dilemma of the AI age will be different. Its defining technology will be widely acquired, mastered, and employed. The achievement of mutual strategic restraint, or even achieving a common definition of restraint, will be more difficult than ever before, both conceptually and practically. The management of nuclear weapons, the endeavor of half a century, remains incomplete and fragmentary. Yet the challenge of assessing the nuclear balance was comparatively straightforward. Warheads could be counted, and their yields were known. Conversely, the capabilities of AI are not fixed, they are dynamic. Unlike nuclear weapons, AIs are hard to track. Once trained, they may be copied easily and run on relatively small machines. And detecting their presence or verifying their absence is difficult or impossible with the present technology. In this age, deterrence will likely arise from complexity, from the multiplicity of vectors through which an AI-enabled attack is able to travel, and from the speed of potential AI responses. To manage AI, strategists must consider how it might be integrated into a responsible pattern of international relations. Before weapons are deployed, strategists must understand the iterative effect of their use, the potential for escalation, and the avenues for de-escalation. A strategy of responsible use, complete with restraining principles, is essential. Policymakers should endeavor to simultaneously address armament, defensive technologies, and strategies, together with arms control rather than considering them as chronologically distinct and functionally antagonistic steps. Doctrines must be formulated and decisions must be made in advance of use. What, then, will be the requirements of restraint? The traditional imposition of restraint on capability is an obvious point of departure. During the Cold War, the approach marked some progress, at least symbolically. In the 19th and 20th centuries, nations evolved restrictions on certain forms of warfare, the use of chemical weapons, for example, and the disproportionate targeting of civilians. As AI weapons make vast new categories of activities possible, or render old forms of activities newly potent, the nations of the world must make urgent decisions regarding what is compatible with concepts of inherent human dignity and moral agency. Security demands anticipation of what is coming, not merely reaction to what already exists. The dilemma posed by AI-related weapons technology is that keeping up research and development is essential for national survival. Without it, we will lose commercial competitiveness and relevance. But the proliferation inherent in the new technology has so far thwarted any attempt at negotiated restraint, even conceptually. An old quest in a new world. Each major technologically advanced country needs to understand that it is on the threshold of a strategic transformation as consequential as the advent of nuclear weapons, but with effects that will be more diverse, diffuse, and unpredictable. Each society that is advancing the frontiers of AI should aim to convene a body at a national level to consider the defense and security aspects of AI and bridge the perspectives of the varied sectors that will shape AI's creation and deployment. This body should be entrusted with two functions: to ensure competitiveness with the rest of the world and, concurrently, to coordinate research on how to prevent or at least limit unwanted escalation or crisis. On this basis, some form of negotiation with allies and adversaries will be essential. If this direction is explored, it will be essential that the world's primary AI powers, the United States and China, accept this reality. They may conclude that, whatever other contests an emerging period of rivalry may bring, the United States and China should seek consensus that they will not enter into a technologically advanced war with each other. A unit or high-ranking subset of officials in each government could be entrusted to monitor and report directly to its president on incipient dangers and how to avoid them. As of this writing, this is not an endeavor that matches public sentiment in either nation. Yet the longer the two powers treat each other as institutionalized rivals without undertaking such a dialogue, the greater the chance that an accident will occur in which both sides are impelled by their technologies and deployment schedules into a crisis that neither seeks and both come to regret, and that may include global-scale military conflict. The paradox of an international system is that every power is driven to act, indeed must act, to maximize its own security. Yet to avoid a constant series of crises, each must accept some sense of responsibility for the maintenance of general peace. And this process involves a recognition of limits. The military planner or security official will think, not incorrectly, in terms of worst-case scenarios and prioritize the acquisition of capabilities to meet them. The statesman, who may be one and the same, is obliged to consider how these capabilities will be used and what the world will look like afterward. In the AI age, long-held strategic logic should be adapted. We will need to overcome, or at least moderate, the drive toward automaticity before catastrophe ensues. We must prevent AIs operating faster than human decision-makers from undertaking irretrievable actions with strategic consequences. Defenses will have to be automated without ceding the essential elements of human control. Ambiguity inherent in the domain, combined with the dynamic, emergent qualities of AI and the ease of dissemination, will complicate assessments. In earlier eras, only a handful of great powers or superpowers bore responsibility for restraining their destructive capabilities and avoiding catastrophe. Soon, proliferation may lead to many more actors assuming a similar task. Leaders of this era can aspire towards 6 primary tasks in the control of their arsenals, with their broad and dynamic combination of conventional, nuclear, cyber, and AI capabilities. First, leaders of rival and adversarial nations must be prepared to speak to one another regularly, as their predecessors did during the Cold War, about the forms of war they do not wish to fight. To aid in this effort, Washington and its allies should organize themselves around interests and values that they identify as common, inherent, and inviolable, and that encompass the experiences of the generations that came of age at the end of the Cold War or following it. Second, the unsolved riddles of nuclear strategy must be given new attention and recognized for what they are, one of the great human strategic, technical, and moral challenges. For many decades, memories of a smoldering Hiroshima and Nagasaki forced recognition of nuclear affairs as a unique and grave endeavor. As former Secretary of State George Shultz told Congress in 2018, "I fear people have lost that sense of dread." Leaders of countries with nuclear weapons must recognize their responsibility to work together to prevent catastrophe. Third, leading cyber and AI powers should endeavor to define their doctrines and limits, even if not all aspects of them are publicly announced, and identify points of correspondence between their doctrines and those of rival powers. If deterrence is to predominate over use, peace over conflict, and limited conflict over general conflict, these terms will need to be understood and defined in terms that reflect the distinctive aspects of cyber and AI. Fourth, nuclear weapons states should commit to conducting their own internal reviews of their command and control and early warning systems. These fail-safe reviews would identify steps to strengthen protections against cyber threats and unauthorized, inadvertent, or accidental use of weapons of mass destruction. These reviews should also include options for precluding cyber attacks on nuclear command and control or early warning assets. Fifth, countries, especially the major technological ones, should create robust and accepted methods of maximizing decision time during periods of heightened tension and in extreme situations. This should be a common conceptual goal, especially among adversaries, that connects both immediate and long-term steps for managing instability and building mutual security. In a crisis, human beings must bear final responsibility for whether advanced weapons are deployed. Especially adversaries should endeavor to agree on a mechanism to ensure that decisions that may prove irrevocable are made at a pace conducive to human thought and deliberation and survival. Finally, the major AI powers should consider how to limit continued proliferation of military AI, or whether to undertake a systemic non-proliferation effort backed by diplomacy and the threat of force. Who are the aspiring acquirers of the technology that would use it for unacceptable destructive purposes? What specific AI weapons warrant this concern? And who will enforce the red line? The established nuclear powers explored such a concept for nuclear proliferation, with mixed success. If a disruptive and potentially destructive new technology is permitted to transform the militaries of the world's most inveterately hostile or morally unconstrained governments, strategic equilibrium may prove difficult to attain and conflict then uncontrollable. Due to the dual-use character of most AI technologies, we have a duty to our society to remain at the forefront of research and development. But this will equally oblige us to understand the limits. If a crisis comes, it will be too late to begin discussing these issues. Once employed in a military conflict, the technology's speed all but ensures that it will impose results at a pace faster than diplomacy can unfold. A discussion of cyber and AI weapons among major powers must be undertaken, if only to develop a common vocabulary of strategic concepts and some sense of one another's red lines. The will to achieve mutual restraint on the most destructive capabilities must not wait for tragedy to arise. As humanity sets out to compete in the creation of new, evolving, and intelligent weapons, history will not forgive a failure to attempt to set limits. In the era of artificial intelligence, the enduring quest for national advantage must be informed by an ethic of human preservation. Chapter 6. AI and Human Identity. In an age in which machines increasingly perform tasks only humans used to be capable of, what, then, will constitute our identity as human beings? As previous chapters have explored, AI will expand what we know of reality. It will alter how we communicate, network, and share information. It will transform the doctrines and strategies we develop and deploy. When we no longer explore and shape reality on our own, when we enlist AI as an adjunct to our perceptions and thoughts? How will we come to see ourselves and our role in the world? How will we reconcile AI with concepts like human autonomy and dignity? In preceding eras, humans have placed themselves at the center of the story. Although most societies recognize human imperfection, they have held that human capacities and experiences constitute a culmination of what mortal beings can aim to achieve in the world. Indeed, they have celebrated individuals who have exemplified pinnacles of the human spirit, illustrating how we wish to see ourselves. These heroes have varied across societies and across eras: leaders, explorers, inventors, martyrs. But they have all embodied aspects of human achievement and, in so doing, human distinctiveness. In the modern age, our veneration of heroes has focused on pioneering exercisers of reason, astronauts, inventors, entrepreneurs, political leaders, who explore and organize our reality. Now we are entering an era in which AI, a human creation, is increasingly entrusted with tasks that previously would have been performed, or attempted, by human minds. As AI executes these tasks, producing results approximating and sometimes surpassing those of human intelligence, it challenges a defining attribute of what it means to be human. Moreover, AI is capable of learning, evolving, and becoming better, according to the objective function it has been given. This dynamic learning permits AI to achieve complex outcomes that were, until now, the preserve of humans and human organizations. With the rise of AI, the definitions of the human role, human aspiration, and human fulfillment will change. What human qualities will this age celebrate? What will its guiding principles be? To the two traditional ways by which people have known the world, faith and reason, AI adds a third. This shift will test, and, in some instances, transform, our core assumptions about the world and our place in it. Reason not only revolutionized the sciences, it also altered our social lives, our arts, and our faith. Under its scrutiny, the hierarchy of feudalism fell, and democracy, the idea that reasoning people should direct their own governance, rose. Now AI will again test the principles upon which our self-understanding rests. In an era in which reality can be predicted, approximated, and simulated by an AI that can assess what is relevant to our lives, predict what will come next, and decide what to do, the role of human reason will change. With it, our senses of our individual and societal purposes will change too. In some areas, AI may augment human reason. In others, AI may prompt in humans the feeling of being tangential to the primary process governing a situation. For the driver whose vehicle selects a different lane or route based on an unexplained, indeed, unspoken, calculation. For the person who is extended or denied credit based on an AI-facilitated review. For the job seeker who is asked to interview or not based on a similar process. And for the scholar who is told the most likely answer by an AI model before his or her research has begun in earnest, the experience may prove efficient but not always fulfilling. For humans accustomed to agency, centrality, and a monopoly on complex intelligence, AI will challenge self-perception. The advances we have considered thus far are illustrations of the many ways in which AI is changing how we interact with the world, and thus how we conceive of ourselves and our role in it. AI makes predictions, such as whether a person is likely to have early-stage breast cancer. It makes decisions, such as what move to make in chess. It highlights and filters information, such as what movies to watch or what investments to hold, and it generates human-like text, from sentences to entire paragraphs and documents. As the sophistication of such capabilities increases, they rapidly become what most people consider creative or expert. The fact that AI is able to make certain predictions or decisions, or generate certain material, does not by itself indicate sophistication akin to that of humans. But in many cases, the results are comparable or superior to those previously produced only by humans. Consider the text that generative models such as GPT-3 are able to create. Nearly any person with a primary education can do a reasonable job of predicting possible completions of a sentence. But writing documents and code, which GPT-3 can do, requires sophisticated skills that humans spend years developing in higher education. Generative models, then, are beginning to challenge our belief that tasks such as sentence completion are distinct from, and simpler than, writing. As generative models improve, AI stands to lead to new perceptions of both the uniqueness and the relative value of human capabilities. Where will that leave us? With perceptions of reality complementary to humans, AI may emerge as an effective partner for people. In scientific discovery, creative work, software development, and other comparable fields, there can be great benefits to having an interlocutor with a different perception. But this collaboration will require humans to adjust to a world in which our reason is not the only, and perhaps not the most informative, way of knowing or navigating reality. This portends a shift in human experience more significant than any that has occurred for nearly 6 centuries, since the advent of the movable type printing press. Societies have 2 options: react and adapt piecemeal, or intentionally begin a dialogue, drawing on all elements of human enterprise, aimed at defining AI's role, and, in so doing, defining ours. The former path we will find by default. The latter will require conscious engagement between leaders and philosophers, scientists and humanists, and other groups. Ultimately, individuals and societies will have to make up their minds which aspects of life to reserve for human intelligence, and which to turn over to AI or human-AI collaboration. Human-AI collaboration does not occur between peers. Ultimately, humans both build and direct AI. But as we grow habituated to and reliant on AI, restricting it may become more costly and psychologically challenging, or even more technically complicated. Our task will be to understand the transformations that AI brings to human experience, the challenges it presents to human identity, and which aspects of these developments require regulation or counterbalancing by other human commitments. Charting a human future turns on defining a human role in an AI age. Transforming human experience. For some, the experience of AI will be empowering. In most societies, a small but growing cohort understands AI. For these individuals, the people who build it, train it, task it, and regulate it, and for the policy makers and business leaders who have technical advisors at their disposal, the partnership should be gratifying if at times startling. Indeed, in many fields, the experience of surpassing traditional reason through specialized technology, as in the cases of AI's breakthroughs in medicine, biology, chemistry, and physics, will often prove fulfilling. Those who lack technical knowledge, or participate in AI-managed processes primarily as consumers, will also frequently find these processes gratifying, as in the case of a busy person who can read or check their email while traveling in a self-driving car. Indeed, embedding AI in consumer products will distribute the technology's benefits widely. However, AI will also operate networks and systems that are not designed for any specific individual user's benefit, and are beyond any individual user's control. In these cases, encounters with AI may be disconcerting or disempowering, as when AI recommends one individual over others for a desirable promotion or transfer, or encourages or promotes attitudes that challenge or overpower prevailing wisdom. For managers, the deployment of AI will have many advantages. AI's decisions are often as accurate or more accurate than humans, and with the proper safeguards, may actually be less biased. Similarly, AI may be more effective at distributing resources, predicting outcomes, and recommending solutions. Indeed, as generative AI becomes more prevalent, its ability to produce novel text, images, video, and code may even enable it to perform as effectively as its human counterparts in roles typically considered creative, such as drafting documents and creating advertisements. For the entrepreneur offering new products, the administrator wielding new information, and the developer creating increasingly powerful AI, advances in these technologies may enhance senses of agency and choice. Optimizing the distribution of resources and increasing the accuracy of decision-making is good for society, but for the individual, meaning is more often derived from autonomy and the ability to explain outcomes on the basis of some set of actions and principles. Explanations supply meaning and permit purpose. The public recognition and explicit application of moral principles supply justice. But an algorithm does not offer reasons grounded in human experience to explain its conclusions to the general public. Some people, particularly those who understand AI, may find this world intelligible. But others, greater in number, may not understand why AI does what it does, diminishing their sense of autonomy and their ability to ascribe meaning to the world. As AI transforms the nature of work, it may jeopardize many people's senses of identity, fulfillment, and financial security. Those most affected by such change and potential dislocation will likely hold blue-collar and middle management jobs that require specific training, as well as professional jobs involving review or interpretation of data or drafting of documents in standard forms. While these changes may create not only new efficiencies but also the need for new workers, those who experience dislocation, even if short-term, may derive little consolation from knowing that it is a temporary aspect of a transition that will increase a society's overall quality of life and economic productivity. Some may find themselves freed from drudgery to focus on the more fulfilling elements of their work. Others may find their skills no longer cutting edge or even necessary. While these challenges are daunting, they are not unprecedented. Previous technological revolutions have displaced or altered work. Inventions such as the mechanical spinning machine displaced laborers and inspired the rise of the Luddites, members of a political movement who sought to ban, or, failing that, to sabotage, new technologies to preserve their old ways of life. The industrialization of agriculture sparked mass migration to the cities. Globalization altered manufacturing and supply chains, and both prompted changes, even unrest, before many societies ultimately absorbed the changes for their overall betterment. Whatever AI's long-term effects prove to be, in the short term, the technology will revolutionize certain economic segments, professions, and identities. Societies need to be ready to supply the displaced not only with alternative sources of income, but also with alternative sources of fulfillment. Decision-making. In the modern age, the standard reaction to a problem has been to seek a solution, sometimes by identifying the human actors responsible for the original deficiency. This view has assigned both responsibility and agency to humans, and both have contributed to our sense of who we are. Now a new actor is entering these equations and may diminish our sense that we are the primary thinkers and movers in a given situation. At times, all of us, whether we create and control AI or just use it, will interact with AI unwittingly or be presented with AI-facilitated answers or outcomes that we did not request. At times, unseen AI may lend the world a magical congeniality, as when stores seemingly anticipate our visits and our whims. At other times, it may produce a Kafkaesque feeling, as when institutions present life-shaping decisions, offers of employment, decisions about car and home loans, or decisions made by security firms or law enforcement, that no single human can explain. These tensions, between reasoned explanations and opaque decision-making, between individuals and large systems, between people with technical knowledge and authority and people without, are not new. What is new is that another intelligence, one that is not human and often inexplicable in terms of human reason, is its source. What is also new is the pervasiveness and scale of this new intelligence. Those who lack knowledge of AI or authority over it may be particularly tempted to reject it. Frustrated by its seeming usurpation of their autonomy or fearful of its additional effects, some may seek to minimize their use of AI and disconnect from social media or other AI-mediated network platforms, shunning its use, at least knowingly, in their daily lives. Some segments of society may go further, insisting on remaining physicalists rather than virtualists. Like the Amish and the Mennonites, some individuals may reject AI entirely, planting themselves firmly in a world of faith and reason alone. But as AI becomes increasingly prevalent, disconnection will become an increasingly lonely journey. Indeed, even the possibility of disconnection may prove illusory, as society becomes ever more digitized, and AI ever more integrated into governments and products. Its reach may prove all but inescapable. Scientific discovery. The development of scientific understanding often involves a substantial gap between theory and experiment, as well as considerable trial and error. With advances in machine learning, we are beginning to see a new paradigm in which models are derived not from a theoretical understanding, as they have been traditionally, but from AI that draws conclusions based on experimental results. This approach necessitates a different expertise from the one that develops theoretical models, or conventional computational models. It requires not only a deep understanding of the problem but also the knowledge of which data, and what representation of that data, will be useful for training an AI model to solve it. In the discovery of halicin, for example, the choice of which compounds, and what attributes of those compounds, to input into the model was on the one hand crucial and on the other fortuitous. The increase in the importance of machine learning to scientific understanding has produced yet another challenge to our views of ourselves and our roles in the world. Science has traditionally been a pinnacle amalgam of human-driven expertise, intuition, and insight. In the long-standing interplay between theory and experiment, human ingenuity drives all aspects of scientific inquiry. But AI adds a non-human, and divergent from human, concept of the world into scientific inquiry, discovery, and understanding. Machine learning is increasingly producing surprising results that prompt new theoretical models and experiments. Just as chess experts have embraced the originally surprising strategies of AlphaZero, interpreting them as a challenge to improve their own understanding of the game, scientists in many disciplines have begun to do the same. Across the biological, chemical, and physical sciences, a hybrid partnership is emerging in which AI is enabling new discoveries that humans are, in response, working to understand and explain. A striking example of AI enabling broad-based discovery in the biological and chemical sciences is the development of AlphaFold, which used reinforcement learning to create powerful new models of proteins. Proteins are large, complex molecules that play a central role in the structure, function, and regulation of tissues, organs, and processes in biological systems. A protein is made up of hundreds, or thousands, of smaller units called amino acids, which are attached together to form long chains. Because there are 20 different types of amino acids in the formation of proteins, a common way to represent a protein is as a sequence that is hundreds, or thousands, of characters long, in which each character comes from an alphabet of 20 characters. While amino acid sequences can be quite useful for studying proteins, they fail to capture one critical aspect of those proteins, the three-dimensional structure that is formed by the chain of amino acids. One can think of proteins as complex shapes that need to fit together in three-dimensional space, much like a lock and key, in order for particular biological or chemical outcomes, such as the progression of a disease or its cure, to occur. The structure of a protein can, in some cases, be measured through painstaking experimental methods such as crystallography. But in many cases, the methods distort or destroy the protein, making it impossible to measure the structure. Thus, the ability to determine three-dimensional structure from the amino acid sequence is critical. Since the 1970s, this challenge has been called protein folding. Before 2016, there had not been much progress toward improving the accuracy of protein folding, until a new program, AlphaFold, yielded major progress. As its name implies, AlphaFold was informed by the approach developers took when they taught AlphaZero to play chess. Like AlphaZero, AlphaFold uses reinforcement learning to model proteins without requiring human expertise. In this case, the known protein structures previous approaches relied upon. AlphaFold has more than doubled the accuracy of protein folding from around 40 to around 85%, enabling biologists and chemists around the world to revisit old questions they had been unable to answer, and to ask new questions about battling pathogens in people, animals, and plants. Advances like AlphaFold, impossible without AI, are transcending previous limits in measurement and prediction. The result is changes in how scientists approach what they can learn in order to cure diseases, protect the environment, and solve other essential challenges. Education and lifelong learning. Coming of age in the presence of AI will alter our relationships, both with one another and with ourselves. Just as a divide exists today between digital natives and prior generations, so, too, will a divide emerge between AI natives and the people who precede them. In the future, children may grow up with AI assistants, more advanced than Alexas and Google Homes, that will be many things at once: babysitter, tutor, advisor, friend. Such an assistant will be able to teach children virtually any language or train children in any subject, calibrating its style to individual students' performance and learning styles to bring out their best. AI may serve as a playmate when a child is bored and as a monitor when a child's parent is away. As AI-provided and tailored education is introduced, the average human's capabilities stand both to increase and to be challenged. The boundary between humans and AI is strikingly porous. If children acquire digital assistants at an early age, they will become habituated to them. At the same time, digital assistants will evolve with their owners, internalizing their preferences and biases as they mature. A digital assistant tasked to maximize a human partner's convenience or fulfillment through personalization may produce recommendations and information that are deemed essential even if the human user cannot explain exactly why they are better than any alternative resources. Over time, individuals may come to prefer their digital assistants over humans, for humans will be less intuitive of their preferences and more disagreeable. if only because humans have personalities and desires not keyed to other individuals. As a result, our dependence on one another, on human relationships, may decrease. What, then, will become of the ineffable qualities and lessons of childhood? How will the omnipresent companionship of a machine, which does not feel or experience human emotion, but may mimic it, affect a child's perception of the world and his or her socialization? How will it shape imagination? How will it change the nature of play? How will it alter the process of making friends or fitting in? Arguably, the availability of digital information has already transformed the education and cultural experience of a generation. Now the world is embarking on another great experiment, in which children will grow up with machines that will, in many ways, act as human teachers have for generations, but without human sensibilities, insight, and emotion. Eventually, the experiment's participants will likely ask whether their experiences are being altered in ways they did not expect or accept. Parents, alarmed by the potentially uncertain effects of such exposure on their children, may push back. Just as parents a generation ago limited television time and parents today limit screen time, parents in the future may limit AI time. But those who want to push their children to succeed, or who lack the inclination or ability to replace AI with a human parent or tutor, or who simply want to satisfy their children's desire to have AI friends, may sanction AI companionship for their children. So children, learning, evolving, impressionable, may form their impressions of the world in dialogue with AIs. The irony is that even as digitization is making an increasing amount of information available, it is diminishing the space required for deep, concentrated thought. Today's near-constant stream of media increases the cost, and thus decreases the frequency, of contemplation. Algorithms promote what seizes attention in response to the human desire for stimulation, and what seizes attention is often the dramatic, the surprising, and the emotional. Whether an individual can find space in this environment for careful thought is one matter. Another is that the now dominant forms of communication are non-conducive to the promotion of tempered reasoning. New information intermediaries. As we said in Chapter 4, AI increasingly shapes our informational domain. To inform and organize human experience, intermediaries have been created, organizations and institutions that distill complex information, highlight what individuals need to know, and broadcast the results. As societies increasingly divided their physical labor, they also divided their mental labor, creating newspapers and journals to inform citizens generally and founding universities to educate them specifically. Since then, information has been aggregated, distilled, and broadcast, and its meaning defined, by such institutions. Now, in every domain characterized by intensive intellectual labor, from finance to law, AI is being integrated into the process of learning. But humans cannot always verify that what AI presents is representative. We cannot always explain why applications such as TikTok and YouTube promote some videos over others. Human editors and anchors, on the other hand, can provide explanation, accurate or not, of their reasons for selecting what they present. As long as people desire such explanation, the age of AI will disappoint the majority of people who do not understand the technology's processes and mechanisms. AI's effects on human knowledge are paradoxical. On the one hand, AI intermediaries can navigate and analyze bodies of data vaster than the unaided human mind could have previously contemplated. On the other, this power, the ability to engage with vast bodies of data, may also accentuate forms of manipulation and error. AI is capable of exploiting human passions more effectively than traditional propaganda. Having tailored itself to individual preferences and instincts, AI elicits responses its creator or user desires. Similarly, the deployment of AI intermediaries may also amplify inherent biases, even if these AI intermediaries are technically under human control. The dynamics of market competition prompt social media platforms and search engines to present information that users find most compelling. As a result, information that users are believed to want to see is prioritized, distorting a representative picture of reality. Much as technology accelerated the speed of information production and dissemination in the 19th and 20th centuries, in this era, information is being altered by the mapping of AI onto dissemination processes. Some people will seek information filters that do not distort, or at least distort transparently. Some will balance filter against filter, independently weighing the results. Others may opt out entirely, preferring filtration by traditional human intermediaries. Yet when the majority of people in a society accept AI intermediation, either as a default or as the price of powering network platforms, those pursuing traditional forms of personal inquiry through research and reason may find themselves unable to keep pace with events. They will certainly find their ability to shape them progressively limited. If information and entertainment become immersive, personalized, and synthetic, such as AI-sorted news, confirming people's long-held beliefs, or AI-generated movies starring long-deceased actors, will a society have a common understanding of its history and current affairs? Will it have a common culture? If an AI is instructed to scan a century's worth of music or television and produce a hit, does it create or merely assemble? How will writers, actors, artists, and other creators, whose labors have traditionally been treated as a unique human engagement with reality and lived experience, see themselves and be seen by others? A new human future. Traditional reason and faith will persist in the age of AI, but their nature and scope are bound to be profoundly affected by the introduction of a new, powerful, machine-operated form of logic. Human identity may continue to rest on the pinnacle of animate intelligence, but human reason will cease to describe the full sweep of the intelligence that works to comprehend reality. To make sense of our place in this world, our emphasis may need to shift from the centrality of human reason to the centrality of human dignity and autonomy. The Enlightenment was characterized by attempts to define human reason and understand it in relation to, and in contrast with, previous human eras. The political philosophers of the Enlightenment, Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, and many others, derived their concepts from theoretical states of nature, from which they articulated views of the attributes of human beings and the structure of society. In turn, leaders asked how human knowledge could be pooled and objectively disseminated to permit enlightened government and human flourishing. Absent similarly comprehensive efforts to understand human nature, the disorientations of the AI age are going to prove difficult to mitigate. The cautious may seek to restrict AI, confining its use to discrete functions and circumscribing when, where, and how it is used. Societies or individuals may reserve the role of principal and judge for themselves, relegating AI to the position of support staff. However, competitive dynamics will challenge limitations, of which the security dilemmas presented in the previous chapter are the starkest evidence. Barring fundamental ethical or legal constraints, what company would forego knowledge of AI functionality a rival has used to offer new products or services? If AI enables a bureaucrat, architect, or investor to predict outcomes or conclusions with ease, on what basis would he or she not use it? Given the pressures for deployment, limitations on AI uses that are, on their face, desirable will need to be formulated at a society-wide or international level. AI may take a leading role in exploring and managing both the physical and digital worlds. In specific domains, humans may defer to AI, preferring its processes to the limitations of the human mind. This deference could prompt many or even most humans to retreat into individual, filtered, customized worlds. In this scenario, AI's power, combined with its prevalence, invisibility, and opacity, will raise questions about the prospects for free societies and even for free will. In many arenas, AI and humans will instead become equal partners in the enterprise of exploration. Consequently, human identity will come to reflect reconciliation with new relationships, both with AI and with reality. Societies will carve out distinct spheres for human leadership. At the same time, they will develop the social structures and habits necessary to understand and interact fruitfully with AI. Societies need to build the intellectual and psychological infrastructure to engage with AI and exercise its unique intelligence, to benefit humans as much as possible. The technology will compel adaptation in many, indeed, most, aspects of political and social life. In each discrete major new deployment of AI, it will be crucial to establish the balance. Societies and their leaders will have to choose when individuals should be notified that they are dealing with AI as well as what powers they have in those interactions. Ultimately, through these choices, a new human identity for the AI age will be made manifest. Some societies and institutions may adapt by degrees. Others, however, may find their foundational assumptions in conflict with the way they have come to perceive reality and themselves. Since AI facilitates education and access to information even as it increases the potential for amplification and manipulability, these conflicts may grow. Better informed, better equipped, and with their viewpoints amplified, individuals may demand more of their governments. Several principles emerge. First, to ensure human autonomy, core governmental decisions should be carved out of AI-imbued structures and limited to human administration and oversight. Principles inherent in our societies provide for peaceful resolutions of disputes. In this process, order and legitimacy are linked. Order without legitimacy is mere force. Ensuring human oversight of, and determinative participation in, the basic elements of government will be essential to sustaining legitimacy. In the administration of justice, for example, providing explanations and moral reasoning are crucial elements of legitimacy, permitting participants to assess a tribunal's fairness and challenge its conclusions, if they fail to accord with societally held moral principles. It follows that in the age of AI, whenever such a significant issue is at stake, the deciders will need to be qualified, non-anonymous humans who can offer reasons for the choices made. Similarly, democracy must retain human qualities. At the most basic level, this will mean protecting the integrity of democratic deliberations and elections. Meaningful deliberation requires more than the opportunity to speak. It also requires the protection of human speech from AI distortion. Free speech needs to be continued for humans but not extended to AI. As we said in Chapter 4, AI has the capacity to generate, both in high quality and large volume, misinformation such as deep fakes, which are very difficult to distinguish from real video and audio recordings. Although automated AI speech was created and deployed at people's behest, it will be important to develop understandable distinctions between it and genuine human speech. Though regulation of AI intermediation that prevents the promotion of misinformation and disinformation deliberately created falsehoods, will be difficult, it will be crucial. In a democracy, speech permits citizens to share relevant information, to participate deliberatively in the democratic process, and to pursue self-realization through the production of fiction, art, and poetry. AI-generated false statements may approximate human speech, but they serve only to drown it out or distort it. Curbing the spread of AI that produces misinformation, therefore, would help preserve the speech that is vital to our deliberative process. Does one classify an AI dialogue between two public figures who never met as misinformation, entertainment, or political inquiry, or does the answer depend on the context or on the participants? Does an individual have the right not to be represented in a simulated reality without his or her permission? If permission is granted, is the synthetic expression any more genuine? Each society must determine in the first instance the full range of permissible and impermissible uses of AI in various domains. Access to certain powerful AI, such as AGI, will need to be strictly guarded to prevent misuse. Because AGI will likely be so expensive to build that only a few will be, access may be inherently limited. Certain limits may violate a society's concepts of free enterprise and the democratic process. Others, such as the need to restrict the use of AI in the production of biological weapons, should be readily agreed upon but will require international collaboration. As of this writing, the EU has outlined plans to regulate AI seeking to balance European values such as privacy and freedom with the need for economic development and support of European-grown AI companies. The regulations chart a course between that of China, where the state is investing heavily in AI, including for surveillance purposes, and that of the United States, where AI R&D has largely been left to the private sector. The EU's goal is to rein in the ways companies and governments use data and AI and facilitate the creation and growth of European AI companies. The regulatory framework includes risk assessments of various uses of AI and imposes limits, or even bans on government use of certain technologies deemed high risk, such as facial recognition, though facial recognition has beneficial uses, such as finding missing persons and combating human trafficking. There will undoubtedly be extensive debate and modification of the initial concept, but its first form is an example of a society determining the range of limitations on AI that it believes will enable it to advance its way of life and future. In time, these efforts will be institutionalized. In the United States, academic groups and advisory bodies are already beginning to examine the relationships between existing processes and structures, and the rise of artificial intelligence. These include efforts in academia, such as the MIT Initiative to Address the Future of Work, and efforts in government, such as the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. Some societies may forego analysis altogether. They will fall behind societies that, because they inquire, adapt their institutions in advance, or, as we discuss in the following chapter, establish completely new institutions, thereby reducing dislocations and maximizing the material and intellectual benefits partnership with AI offers. As AI develops, the establishment of such institutions will be crucial. Perceptions of reality and humanity. Reality explored by AI, or with the assistance of AI, may prove to be something other than what humans had imagined. It may have patterns we have never discerned or cannot conceptualize. Its underlying structure, penetrated by AI, may be inexpressible in human language alone. As one of our colleagues has observed of AlphaZero, examples like this show that there are ways of knowing that are not available to human consciousness. To chart the frontiers of contemporary knowledge, we may task AI to probe realms we cannot enter. It may return with patterns or predictions we do not fully grasp. The prognostications of the Gnostic philosophers, of an inner reality beyond ordinary human experience, may prove newly significant. We may find ourselves one step closer to the concept of pure knowledge, less limited by the structure of our minds and the patterns of conventional human thought. Not only will we have to redefine our roles as something other than the sole knower of reality, we will also have to redefine the very reality we thought we were exploring. And even if reality does not mystify us, the emergence of AI may still alter our engagement with it and with one another. As AI becomes prevalent, some people may regard humankind as more capable than ever of knowing and organizing its surroundings. Others may declare our capabilities less adept than we had believed. Such redefinitions of ourselves, and of the reality we find ourselves in, will transform basic assumptions, and, with them, social, economic, and political arrangements. The medieval world had its imago Dei, its feudal agrarian patterns, its reverence for the crown, and its orientation toward the soaring heights of the cathedral spire. The Age of Reason had its cogito ergo sum and its quest for new horizons, and, with it, new assertions of agency within both individual and societal notions of destiny. The age of AI has yet to define its organizing principles, its moral concepts, or its sense of aspirations and limitations. The AI revolution will occur more quickly than most humans expect. Unless we develop new concepts to explain, interpret, and organize its consequent transformations, we will be unprepared to navigate it or its implications. Morally, philosophically, psychologically, practically, in every way, we find ourselves on the precipice of a new epoch. We must draw on our deepest resources, reason, faith, tradition, and technology, to adapt our relationship with reality so it remains human. Chapter 7. AI and the Future. The changes wrought by advances in printing in 15th-century Europe offer a historical and philosophical comparison to the challenges of the age of AI. In medieval Europe, knowledge was esteemed but books were rare. Individual authors produced literature or encyclopedic compilations of facts, legends, and religious teachings. But these books were a treasure vouchsafed to a few. Most experience was lived, and most knowledge was transmitted orally. In 1450, Johannes Gutenberg, a goldsmith in the German city of Mainz, used borrowed money to fund the creation of an experimental printing press. His effort barely succeeded, his business floundered, and his creditors sued, but by 1455, the Gutenberg Bible, Europe's first printed book, appeared. Ultimately, his printing press brought about a revolution that reverberated across every sphere of Western, and eventually global, life. By 1500, an estimated 9 million printed books circulated in Europe, with the price of an individual book having plummeted. Not only was the Bible widely distributed in the languages of day-to-day life, rather than Latin, the works of classical authors in the fields of history, literature, grammar, and logic also began to proliferate. Before the advent of the printed book, medieval Europeans accessed knowledge primarily through community traditions, participating in harvesting and seasonal cycles, with their accumulation of folk wisdom, practicing faith and observing its sacraments at places of worship, joining a guild, learning its techniques, and being admitted to its specialized networks. When new information was acquired or new ideas arose, news from abroad, an innovative farming or mechanical invention, novel theological interpretations, it was transmitted either orally through a community or manually through hand-copied manuscripts. As printed books became widely available, the relationship between individuals and knowledge changed. New information and ideas could spread quickly, through more varied channels. Individuals could seek out information useful to their specific endeavors and teach it to themselves. By examining source texts, they could probe accepted truths. Those with strong convictions and access to modest resources or a patron could publish their insights and interpretations. Advances in science and mathematics could be transmitted quickly, at continental scale. The exchange of pamphlets became an accepted method of political dispute, intertwined with theological dispute. New ideas spread, often either toppling or fundamentally reshaping established orders, leading to adaptations of religion. The Reformation, revolutions in politics, adjusting the concept of national sovereignty, and new understandings in the sciences, redefining the concept of reality. Today, a new epoch beckons. In it, once again, technology will transform knowledge, discovery, communication, and individual thought. Artificial intelligence is not human. It does not hope, pray, or feel. Nor does it have awareness or reflective capabilities. It is a human creation, reflecting human-designed processes on human-created machines. Yet in some instances, at awesome scale and speed, it produces results approximating those that have, until now, only been reached through human reason. Sometimes, its results astound. As a result, it may reveal aspects of reality more dramatic than any we have ever contemplated. Individuals and societies that enlist AI as a partner to amplify skills or pursue ideas may be capable of feats, scientific, medical, military, political, and social, that eclipse those of preceding periods. Yet once machines approximating human intelligence are regarded as key to producing better and faster results, reason alone may come to seem archaic. After defining an epoch, the exercise of individual human reason may find its significance altered. The printing revolution in 15th-century Europe produced new ideas and discourse, both disrupting and enriching established ways of life. The AI revolution stands to do something similar: access new information, produce major scientific and economic advances, and in so doing, transform the world. But its impact on discourse will be difficult to determine. By helping humanity navigate the sheer totality of digital information, AI will open unprecedented vistas of knowledge and understanding. Alternatively, its discovery of patterns in masses of data may produce a set of maxims that become accepted as orthodoxy across continental and global network platforms. This, in turn, may diminish humans' capacity for skeptical inquiry that has defined the current epoch. Further, it may channel certain societies and network platform communities into separate and contradictory branches of reality. AI may better or, if wrongly deployed, worsen humanity, but the mere fact of its existence challenges and, in some cases, transcends fundamental assumptions. Until now, humans alone developed their understanding of reality, a capacity that defined our place in the world and relationship to it. From this, we elaborated our philosophies, designed our governments and military strategies, and developed our moral precepts. Now AI has revealed that reality may be known in different ways, perhaps in more complex ways, than what has been understood by humans alone. At times, its achievements may be as striking and disorienting as those of the most influential human thinkers in their heydays, producing bolts of insight and challenges to established concepts, all of which demand a reckoning. Even more frequently, AI will be invisible, embedded in the mundane, subtly shaping our experiences in ways we find intuitively suitable. We must recognize that AI's achievements, within its defined parameters, sometimes rank beside or even surpass those that human resources enable. We may comfort ourselves by repeating that AI is artificial, that it has not or cannot match our conscious experience of reality. But when we encounter some of AI's achievements, logical feats, technical breakthroughs, strategic insights, and sophisticated management of large, complex systems, it is evident that we are in the presence of another experience of reality by another sophisticated entity. Accessed by AI, new horizons are opening before us. Previously, the limits of our minds constrained our ability to aggregate and analyze data, filter and process news and conversations, and interact socially in the digital domain. AI permits us to navigate these realms more effectively. It finds information and identifies trends that traditional algorithms could not, or at least not with equal grace and efficiency. In so doing, it not only expands physical reality but also permits expansion and organization of the burgeoning digital world. Yet, at the same time, AI subtracts. It hastens dynamics that erode human reason as we have come to understand it, social media, which diminishes the space for reflection, and online searching, which decreases the impetus for conceptualization. Pre-AI algorithms were good at delivering addictive content to humans. AI is excellent at it. As deep reading and analysis contracts, so, too, do the traditional rewards for undertaking these processes. As the cost of opting out of the digital domain increases, its ability to affect human thought, to convince, to steer, to divert, grows. As a consequence, the individual human's role in reviewing, testing, and making sense of information diminishes. In its place, AI's role expands. The Romantics asserted that human emotion was a valid and indeed important source of information. A subjective experience, they argued, was itself a form of truth. The postmoderns took the Romantics' logic a step further, questioning the very possibility of discerning an objective reality through the filter of subjective experience. AI will take the question considerably further, but with paradoxical results. It will scan deep patterns and disclose new objective facts, medical diagnoses, early signs of industrial or environmental disasters, looming security threats. Yet in the worlds of media, politics, discourse, and entertainment, AI will reshape information to conform to our preferences, potentially confirming and deepening biases and, in so doing, narrowing access to an agreement upon an objective truth. In the age of AI, then, human reason will find itself both augmented and diminished. As AI is woven into the fabric of daily existence, expands that existence, and transforms it, humanity will have conflicting impulses. Confronted with technologies beyond the comprehension of the non-expert, some may be tempted to treat AI's pronouncements as quasi-divine judgments. Such impulses, though misguided, do not lack sense. In a world where an intelligence beyond one's comprehension or control draws conclusions that are useful but alien, is it foolish to defer to its judgments? Spurred by this logic, a re-enchantment of the world may ensue, in which AIs are relied upon for oracular pronouncements to which some humans defer without question. Especially in the case of AGI, artificial general intelligence, individuals may perceive godlike intelligence, a superhuman way of knowing the world and intuiting its structures and possibilities. But deference would erode the scope and scale of human reason and thus would likely elicit backlash. Just as some opt out of social media, limit screen time for children, and reject genetically modified foods, so, too, will some attempt to opt out of the AI world, or limit their exposure to AI systems in order to preserve space for their reason. In liberal nations, such choices may be possible, at least at the level of the individual or the family. But they will not be without cost. Declining to use AI will mean not only opting out of conveniences such as automated movie recommendations and driving directions, but also leaving behind vast domains of data, network platforms, and progress in fields from healthcare to finance. At the civilizational level, forgoing AI will be infeasible. Leaders will have to confront the implications of the technology, for whose application they bear significant responsibility. The need for an ethic that comprehends and even guides the AI age is paramount. But it cannot be entrusted to one discipline or field. The computer scientists and business leaders who are developing the technology, the military strategists who seek to deploy it, the political leaders who seek to shape it, and the philosophers and theologians who seek to probe its deeper meanings all see pieces of the picture. All should take part in an exchange of views not shaped by preconceptions. At every turn, humanity will have three primary options: confining AI, partnering with it, or deferring to it. These choices will define AI's application to specific tasks or domains, reflecting philosophical as well as practical dimensions. For example, in airline and automotive emergencies, should an AI co-pilot defer to a human? Or the other way around? For each application, humans will have to chart a course. In some cases, the course will evolve, as AI capabilities and human protocols for testing AI's results also evolve. Sometimes deference will be appropriate. If an AI can spot breast cancer in a mammogram earlier and more accurately than a human can, then employing it will save lives. Sometimes partnership will be best, as in self-driving vehicles that function as today's airplane autopilots do. At other times, though, as in military contexts, strict, well-defined, well-understood limitations will be critical. AI will transform our approach to what we know, how we know, and even what is knowable. The modern era has valued knowledge that human minds obtain through the collection and examination of data and the deduction of insights through observations. In this era, the ideal type of truth has been the singular, verifiable proposition provable through testing. But the AI era will elevate a concept of knowledge that is the result of partnership between humans and machines. Together, we, humans, will create and run computer algorithms that will examine more data more quickly, more systematically, and with a different logic than any human mind can. Sometimes, the result will be the revelation of properties of the world that were beyond our conception, until we cooperated with machines. AI already transcends human perception, in a sense, through chronological compression or time travel. Enabled by algorithms and computing power, it analyzes and learns through processes that would take human minds decades or even centuries to complete. In other respects, time and computing power alone do not describe what AI does. Artificial general intelligence. Are humans and AI approaching the same reality from different standpoints, with complementary strengths? Or do we perceive two different, partially overlapping realities, one that humans can elaborate through reason and another that AI can elaborate through algorithms? If this is the case, then AI perceives things that we do not and cannot, not merely because we do not have the time to reason our way to them, but also because they exist in a realm that our minds cannot conceptualize. The human quest to know the world fully will be transformed, with the haunting recognition that to achieve certain knowledge we may need to entrust AI to acquire it for us and report back. In either case, as AI pursues progressively fuller and broader objectives, it will increasingly appear to humans as a fellow being experiencing and knowing the world, a combination of tool, pet, and mind. This puzzle will only deepen as researchers near or attain AGI. As we wrote in Chapter 3, AGI will not be limited to learning and executing specific tasks. Rather, by definition, AGI will be able to learn and execute a broad range of tasks, much like those humans perform. Developing AGI will require immense computing power, likely resulting in their being created by only a few well-funded organizations. Like current AI, though AGI may be readily distributable, given its capacities, its applications will need to be restricted. Limitations could be imposed by only allowing approved organizations to operate it. Then the questions will become, who controls AGI? Who grants access to it? Is democracy possible in a world in which a few genius machines are operated by a small number of organizations? What, under these circumstances, does partnership with AI look like? If the advent of AGI occurs, it will be a signal intellectual, scientific, and strategic achievement. But it does not have to occur for AI to herald a revolution in human affairs. AI's dynamism and capacity for emergent, in other words, unexpected, actions and solutions distinguish it from prior technologies. Unregulated and unmonitored, AIs could diverge from our expectations and, consequently, our intentions. The decision to confine, partner with, or defer to it will not be made by humans alone. In some cases, it will be dictated by AI itself, in others, by auxiliary forces. Humanity may engage in a race to the bottom. As AI automates processes, permits humans to probe vast bodies of data, and organizes and reorganizes the physical and social worlds, advantages may go to those who move first. Competition could compel deployment of AGI without adequate time to assess the risks, or in disregard of them. An AI ethic is essential. Each individual decision, to constrain, partner, or defer, may or may not have dramatic consequences, but in the aggregate, they will be magnified. They cannot be made in isolation. If humanity is to shape the future, it needs to agree on common principles that guide each choice. Collective action will be hard, and at times impossible, to achieve, but individual actions, with no common ethic to guide them, will only magnify instability. Those who design, train, and partner with AI will be able to achieve objectives on a scale and level of complexity that, until now, have eluded humanity. New scientific breakthroughs, new economic efficiencies, new forms of security, and new dimensions of social monitoring and control. Those who do not have such agency in the process of expanding AI and its uses may come to feel that they are being watched, studied, and acted upon by something they do not understand and did not design or choose, a force that operates with an opacity that in many societies is not tolerated of conventional human actors or institutions, the designers and deployers of AI should be prepared to address these concerns, above all, by explaining to non-technologists what AI is doing, as well as what it knows and how. AI's dynamic and emergent qualities generate ambiguity in at least two respects. First, AI may operate as we expect but generate results that we do not foresee. With those results, it may carry humanity to places its creators did not anticipate. Much like the statesmen of 1914 failed to recognize that the old logic of military mobilization, combined with new technology, would pull Europe into war, deploying AI without careful consideration may have grave consequences. These may be localized, such as a self-driving car that makes a life-threatening decision, or momentous, such as a significant military conflict. Second, in some applications, AI may be unpredictable, with its actions coming as complete surprises. Consider AlphaZero, which, in response to the instruction "win at chess," developed a style of play that, in the millennia-long history of the game, humans had never conceived. While humans may carefully specify AI's objectives, as we give it broader latitude, the paths AI takes to accomplish its objectives may come to surprise or even alarm us. Accordingly, AI's objectives and authorizations need to be designed with care, especially in fields in which its decisions could be lethal. AI should not be treated as automatic. Neither should it be permitted to take irrevocable actions without human supervision, monitoring, or direct control. Created by humans, AI should be overseen by humans. But in our time, one of AI's challenges is that the skills and resources required to create it are not inevitably paired with the philosophical perspective to understand its broader implications. Many of its creators are concerned primarily with the applications they seek to enable and the problems they seek to solve. They may not pause to consider whether the solution might produce a revolution of historic proportions, or how their technology may affect various groups of people. The AI age needs its own Descartes, its own Kant, to explain what is being created and what it will mean for humanity. Reasoned discussion and negotiation involving governments, universities, and private sector innovators should aim to establish limits on practical actions, like the ones that govern the actions of people and organizations today. AI shares attributes of some regulated products, services, technologies, and entities, but it is distinct from them in vital ways, lacking its own fully defined conceptual and legal framework. For example, AI's evolving and emergent properties pose regulatory challenges. What and how it operates in the world may vary across fields and evolve over time, and not always in predictable ways. The governance of people is guided by an ethic. AI begs for an ethic of its own, one that reflects not only the technology's nature, but also the challenges posed by it. Frequently, existing principles will not apply. In the age of faith, courts determined guilt during ordeals in which the accused faced trial by combat and God was believed to dictate victory. In the age of reason, humanity assigned guilt according to the precepts of reason, determining culpability and meting out punishment consistent with notions such as causality and intention. But AIs do not operate by human reason, nor do they have human motivation, intent, or self-reflection. Accordingly, their introduction complicates existing principles of justice being applied to humans. When an autonomous system operating on the basis of its own perceptions and decisions acts, does its creator bear responsibility? Or does the fact that the AI acted sever it from its creator, at least in terms of culpability? If AI is enlisted to monitor signs of criminal wrongdoing, or to assist in judgments of innocence and guilt, must the AI be able to explain how it reached its conclusions in order for human officials to adopt them? At what point and in what contexts in the technology's evolution it should be subject to internationally negotiated restrictions, is another essential subject of debate. If attempted too early, the technology may be stymied, or there may be incentives to conceal its capabilities. If delayed too long, it may have damaging consequences, particularly in military contexts. The challenge is compounded by the difficulty of designing effective verification regimes for a technology that is ethereal, opaque, and easily distributed. Official negotiators will inevitably be governments. But forums need to be created for technologists, ethicists, the corporations creating and operating AIs, and others beyond these fields. For societies, the dilemmas AI raises are profound. Much of our social and political life now transpires on network platforms enabled by AI. This is especially the case for democracies, which depend upon these information spaces for the debate and discourse that form public opinion and confer legitimacy. Who or what institutions should define the technology's role? Who should regulate it? What roles should be played by the individuals who use AI? The corporations that produce it? The governments of the societies that deploy it? As part of addressing such questions, we should seek ways to make it auditable, that is, to make its processes and conclusions both checkable and correctable. In turn, formulating corrections will depend upon the elaboration of principles responsive to AI's forms of perception and decision-making. Morality, volition, even causality do not map neatly onto a world of autonomous AIs. Versions of such questions arise for most other elements of society, from transportation to finance to medicine. Consider AI's impact on social media. Through recent innovations, these platforms have rapidly come to host vital aspects of our communal lives. Twitter and Facebook highlighting, limiting, or outright banning content or individuals, all functions that, as we discussed in Chapter 4, depend on AI, are testaments to their power. In particular, democratic nations will be increasingly challenged by the use of AI in the unilateral, often opaque promotion or removal of content and concepts. Will it be possible to retain our agency as our social and political lives increasingly shift into domains curated by AI, domains that we can only navigate through reliance upon that curation? With the use of AIs to navigate masses of information comes the challenge of distortion, of AIs promoting the world humans instinctually prefer. In this domain, our cognitive biases, which AIs can readily magnify, echo. And with those reverberations, with that multiplicity of choice coupled with the power to select and screen, misinformation proliferates. Social media companies do not run news feeds to promote extreme and violent political polarization. But it is self-evident that these services have not resulted in the maximization of enlightened discourse. AI, free information, and independent thought. What, then, should our relationship with AI be? Should it be cabined, empowered, or a partner in governing these spaces? That the distribution of certain information, and, even more so, deliberate disinformation, can damage, divide, and incite is beyond dispute. Some limits are needed. Yet the alacrity with which harmful information is now decried, combated, and suppressed should also prompt reflection. In a free society, the definitions of harmful and disinformation should not be the purview of corporations alone. But if they are entrusted to a government panel or agency, that body should operate according to defined public standards and through verifiable processes in order not to be subject to exploitation by those in power. If they are entrusted to an AI algorithm, the objective function, learning, decisions, and actions of that algorithm must be clear and subject to external review and at least some form of human appeal. Naturally, the answers will vary across societies. Some may emphasize free speech, possibly differently based on their relative understandings of individual expression, and may thus limit AI's role in moderating content. Each society will choose what it values, perhaps resulting in complex relations with operators of transnational network platforms. AI is porous, it learns from humans, even as we design and shape it. Thus, not only will each society's choices vary, so, too, will each society's relationship with AI, its perception of AI, and the patterns that its AIs imitate and learn from human teachers. Nevertheless, The quest for facts and truth should not lead societies to experience life through a filter whose contours are undisclosed and untestable. The spontaneous experience of reality, in all its contradiction and complexity, is an important aspect of the human condition, even when it leads to inefficiency or error. AI and international order. Globally, myriad questions demand answers. How can AI network platforms be regulated without inciting tensions among countries concerned about their security implications? Will such network platforms erode traditional concepts of state sovereignty? Will the resulting changes impose a polarity on the world not known since the collapse of the Soviet Union? Will small nations object? Will efforts to mediate such consequences succeed, or have any hope of success at all? As AI's capabilities continue to increase, defining humanity's role in partnership with it will be ever more important and complicated. One can contemplate a world in which humans defer to AI to an ever greater degree over issues of ever-increasing magnitude. In a world in which an opponent successfully deploys AI, could leaders defending against it responsibly decide not to deploy their own, even if they were unsure what evolution that deployment would portend? And if the AI possessed a superior ability to recommend it a course of action, could policymakers reasonably refuse, even if the course of action entailed sacrifice of some magnitude? For what human could know whether the sacrifice was essential to victory? And if it was, would the policymaker truly wish to gainsay it? In other words, we may have no choice but to foster AI. But we also have a duty to shape it in a way that is compatible with a human future. Imperfection is one of the most enduring aspects of human experience, especially of leadership. Often, policymakers are distracted by parochial concerns. Sometimes, they act on the basis of faulty assumptions. Other times, they act out of pure emotion. Still other times, ideology warps their vision. Whatever strategies emerge to structure the human-AI partnership, they must accommodate. If AI displays superhuman capabilities in some areas, their use must be assimilable into imperfect human contexts. In the security realm, AI-enabled systems will be so responsive that adversaries may attempt to attack before the systems are operational. The result may be an inherently destabilizing situation, comparable to the one created by nuclear weapons. Yet nuclear weapons are situated in an international framework of security and arms control concepts, developed over decades by governments, scientists, strategists, and ethicists, subject to refinement, debate, and negotiation. AI and cyber weapons have no comparable framework. Indeed, governments may be reluctant to acknowledge their existence. Nations, and probably technology companies, need to agree on how they will coexist with weaponized AI. The diffusion of AI through governments' defense functions will alter international equilibrium and the calculations that have largely sustained it in our era. Nuclear weapons are costly and, because of their size and structure, difficult to conceal. AI, on the other hand, runs on widely available computers. Because of the expertise and computing resources needed to train machine learning models, creating an AI requires the resources of large companies or nation-states. Because the application of AIs is conducted on relatively small computers, AI will be broadly available, including in ways not intended. Will AI-enabled weapons ultimately be available to anyone with a laptop, a connection to the internet, and an ability to navigate its dark elements? Will governments empower loosely affiliated or unaffiliated actors to use AI to harass their opponents? Will terrorists engineer AI attacks? Will they be able to, falsely, attribute them to states or other actors. Diplomacy, which used to be conducted in an organized, predictable arena, will have vast ranges of both information and operation. The previously sharp lines drawn by geography and language will continue to dissolve. AI translators will facilitate speech, uninsulated by the tempering effect of the cultural familiarity that comes with linguistic study. AI-enabled network platforms will promote communication across borders. Moreover, hacking and disinformation will continue to distort perception and evaluation. As complexity increases, the formulation of implementable agreements with predictable outcomes will grow more difficult. The grafting of AI functionality onto cyber weapons deepens this dilemma. Humanity sidestepped the nuclear paradox by sharply distinguishing between conventional forces, deemed reconcilable with traditional strategy, and nuclear weapons, deemed exceptional. Where nuclear weapons applied force bluntly, conventional forces were discriminating. But cyber weapons, which are capable of both discrimination and massive destruction, erase this barrier. As AI is mapped onto them, these weapons become more unpredictable and potentially more destructive. Simultaneously, as they move through networks, these weapons defy attribution. They also defy detection. Unlike nuclear weapons, they may be carried on thumb drives, and facilitate diffusion. And in some forms, they can, once deployed, be difficult to control, particularly given AI's dynamic and emergent nature. This situation challenges the premise of a rules-based world order. Additionally, it gives rise to an imperative to develop a concept of arms control for AI. In the age of AI, deterrence will not operate from historical precepts. It will not be able to. At the beginning of the nuclear age, the verities developed in discussions between leading professors who had government experience at Harvard, MIT, and Caltech led to a conceptual framework for nuclear arms control that, in turn, contributed to a regime and, in the United States and other countries, agencies to implement it. While the academics' thinking was important, it was conducted separately from the Pentagon's thinking about conventional war. It was an addition, not a modification. But the potential military uses of AI are broader than those of nuclear arms, and the divisions between offense and defense are, at least currently, unclear. In a world of such complexity and inherent incalculability, where AIs introduce another possible source of misperception and mistake, sooner or later, the great powers that possess high-tech capabilities will have to undertake a permanent dialogue. Such dialogue should be focused on the fundamental, averting catastrophe and, in so doing, surviving. AI and other emerging technologies, such as quantum computing, seem to be moving humans closer to knowing reality beyond the confines of our own perception. Ultimately, however, we may find that even these technologies have limits. Our problem is that we have not yet grasped their philosophical implications. We are being advanced by them, but automatically rather than consciously. The last time human consciousness was changed significantly, the Enlightenment, the transformation occurred because new technology engendered new philosophical insights, which, in turn, were spread by the technology, in the form of the printing press. In our period, new technology has been developed, but remains in need of a guiding philosophy. AI is a grand undertaking with profound potential benefits. Humans are developing it, but will we employ it to make our lives better or to make our lives worse? It promises stronger medicines, more efficient and more equitable healthcare, more sustainable environmental practices, and other advances. Simultaneously, however, it has the capability to distort or, at the very least, compound the complexity of the consumption of information and the identification of truth, leading some people to let their capacities for independent reason and judgment atrophy. Other countries have made AI a national project. The United States has not yet, as a nation, systematically explored its scope, studied its implications, or begun the process of reconciling with it. The United States must make all these projects national priorities. This process will require people with deep experience in various domains to work together, a process that would greatly benefit from, and perhaps require, the leadership of a small group of respected figures from the highest levels of government, business, and academia. Such a group or commission should have at least two functions. 1. Nationally, it should ensure that the country remains intellectually and strategically competitive in AI. 2. Both nationally and globally, it should be aware, and raise awareness, of the cultural implications AI produces. In addition, the group should be prepared to engage with existing national and subnational groups. We write in the midst of a great endeavor that encompasses all human civilizations, indeed, the entire human species. Its initiators did not necessarily conceive of it as such. Their motivation was to solve problems, not to ponder or reshape the human condition. Technology, strategy, and philosophy need to be brought into some alignment, lest one outstrip the others. What about traditional society should we guard? And what about traditional society should we risk in order to achieve a superior one? How can AI's emergent qualities be integrated into traditional concepts of societal norms and international equilibrium? What other questions should we seek to answer when, for the situation in which we find ourselves, we have no experience or intuition? Finally, a question looms: can the need for philosophy be met by humans assisted by AIs, which interpret and thus understand the world differently? Is our destiny one in which humans do not completely understand machines, but make peace with them and, in so doing, change the world? Immanuel Kant opened the preface to his critique of pure reason with an observation. Human reason has the peculiar fate in one species of its cognitions that it is burdened with questions which it cannot dismiss, since they are given to it as problems by the nature of reason itself, but which it also cannot answer, since they transcend every capacity of human reason. In the centuries since, humanity has probed deeply into these questions, some of which concern the nature of the mind, reason, and reality itself. And humanity has made great breakthroughs. It has also encountered many of the limitations Kant posited, a realm of questions it cannot answer, of facts it cannot know fully. The advent of AI, with its capacity to learn and process information in ways that human reason alone cannot, may yield progress on questions that have proven beyond our capacity to answer. But success will produce new questions, some of which we have attempted to articulate in this book. Human intelligence and artificial intelligence are meeting, being applied to pursuits on national, continental, and even global scales. Understanding this transition, and developing a guiding ethic for it, will require commitment and insight from many elements of society, scientists and strategists, statesmen and philosophers, clerics and CEOs. This commitment must be made within nations and among them. Now is the time to define both our partnership with artificial intelligence and the reality that will result.